Let's go. Yeah. I really got the feeling today that everything is going my way. Now this is what I'm talking about. Every time I see your smile, it makes me shout. Let's go. Let's go. Nothing's gonna stop us today. Get on the bus or get out the way. We're cruising with the radio on. So turn it up to 10. Here comes our favorite song. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go.
Functions Friday. This is your host, Samuel Adrani, and it's another Friday, and as always, it's time for Functions Friday. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about function proxies. What are function proxies? When we come back, that's what we'll be talking about. Stay tuned. Awesome. So, function proxies. So in the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about Azure functions. We talked about, we saw an overview of what they were. I created a very simple function. We went ahead to talk about different function triggers. We looked at the HTTP trigger, we looked at the timer trigger, and we created an HTTP trigger that in turn called an API that gives you some information when you pass a number. So today I want us to talk about function proxies, the um, importance of the proxies, what they can help us do. And then once we move out from this section, in next week we'll start talking about various bindings. So welcome if you're just joining us today. We're going to talk about function proxies. So before then, just interacting with a few people on what's on Facebook right now. Um, I am actually live, so some people want to know um, if I am live. Yes, I'm live right now. So before we get into functions, a few housekeeping items that I want you to be aware of. So in the news, upcoming events we have tomorrow, the Microsoft User Group Ghana is actually hosting, I think, the mixed reality boot camp. Yes, in Mervyn Peak Ambassador Hotel, the Emporium. I think it's at 9 a.m. So tomorrow, if you're looking for an event, a tech event to go to, you can check out the Microsoft User Group event. Then the Accra.net User Group official. We have a revamp of our new logo. I think it's showing on the. Let's see. Yeah, maybe I can just throw that in. Yep. So yeah, it's official. So we have a revamp logo. We have a revamp meetup group. So we have meetings once every month. That is usually the last Saturday of every month. So we have the Global AI Bootcamp coming up. We have a series of really cool stuff lined up. So make a date on your calendar and join us. It's December 14th for the Global AI Bootcamp. So you don't want to miss that. Okay, now with all the housekeeping things out of the way, let's go ahead and now start talking about Azure Function Proxies. Now, to do that, as usual, I will just flip right in. Let's go take that from the horse's own mouth. So I keep saying that there are a lot of information on the Microsoft documentation site. Try as much as possible to visit the site and get a lot of insight into it. Let me zoom this out a bit so you can see that. Yep. So this is just I'm just picking this from the official Microsoft site from the functions documentations, which you should spend time with. So basically, function is just the functions proxy is just a feature that allows you to specify endpoints, for your functions app, and it allows it to be implemented by another resource. Let's say, for instance, I have a function app that is calling another API or doing something else. Now, proxies help me to give it, some unique name or make it more REST-like, if so to speak. Now, you can use proxies also to break your large API. So if you have, huge APIs of multiple, processes, you can actually break them into multiple function apps and use these proxies to represent them. So kind of like you're building a microservices architecture. So we're going to be looking at how to create a proxy. We already have a function that's running. So we'll look at this function as it exists now, and then we're going to create a proxy that allows us to have a unified or simplified functions interface for calling that. And that's going to give us an idea of subsequently creating multiple proxies to, interface with different functions. And then I also talk about how you can actually modify requests, both backend requests and responses when you use proxies. It allows you to do some manipulations, of it. So to do this as usual, let's go to my portal. I think I have it logged in, so yep, let's get this done. And like I always say, don't forget, if you have any questions, you can always ask me in the chat. I'll respond. If you have any concerns, if you want to know anything about Azure functions, tech, you just reach me at any of my social media handles, and I will be glad to help you. So in my dashboard, I'm going to go to the functions app. This is my Azure portals. And yes, last on IoT Tuesday, I made mention that I am actually dying to get my hands on the new Microsoft Azure icons, and you can see that. I mean, they look cool, rebranded now. So I chanced upon an awesome tool. I think there is an MVP who actually wrote an article about using the tool to actually download these icons, and I happened to download the tool, and it's working cool. Let me show you something. Let me switch to the main view. Now it's called Amazing Icon Downloader. So I have the Chrome extension. So as you can see, these are all new SVG icons in the Azure portal right now. So if I hit this Amazing Icon Downloader button, look at this. Cool. It actually gives me access to all the SVG icons right now in the Azure portal, and prefer and in any other website that has SVG icons. So here I can just select that, hit download, boop, and I have the icon. And now I can use it in my presentations, I can use it in my slideshows and all that. So cool tool to check out. If you haven't, go check it out. Anyway, so back to proxies. So we'll go to functions app, and as a recap, we have the Functions Friday node app that is going to contain all our functions we're going to build on this channel. So uh, now, if we open this up, we have our HTTP trigger function that calls the numbers API. And if you've been following the stream, the numbers API actually allows you to call an endpoint with any number, and it actually tells you a fact about that number, right? Cool. So let's check this. So if we open our functions, and this is a node function. So this is a magic number. If I open magic number right now, as it were, what do we get? Okay, so this is our function, all right? So if I copy the function URL here and we run this, let me zoom this up. We run this in a web browser. As usual, we need to pass in a parameter of number. Let's say today I am feeling like 25. All right, so we do 25. Well, yeah, warms up a bit, so that's fine. Just give it a little nudge. Let's copy this, paste this here. Let's do question mark and number equals 50. Yep. And now our function is running. If we do 52, it gives us something. 52 is the number. Oh, okay. Sorry, I need to um, bring this out a bit. So yeah, so 52 is the number of white keys notes in C major. So I'm feeling a bit generous. 25. Let's check this out. 25 is the percentage of all scald burns to children from hot tap water. So this is what we have. We have a simple function, okay, HTTP triggers that calls our API. Now, what if we wanted to create a proxy from this function? What's a proxy? Right now, take a look at this endpoint. I have to do functions, function Friday, node, Azure website or net, API, magic numbers, question mark, numbers. Now, this is a mouthful. All right, this can be a mouthful. Now, what? Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Storm. Really appreciate it. Get in touch. Let's have fun learning. Thank you for that. Um, so let's imagine this is a handful. This is a mouthful. All right. So what we can do is that we can use Azure Function Proxies to actually normalize this endpoint, or we can even use it to call to do some further processing when the request comes in. So the idea is that if I should let me bring up a notepad just to illustrate this. So what if I want to have something like let me just use the host, and let me just use this to represent the whole of function Friday, blah blah blah, all that. Okay, let me just use that to represent it. So let's say that let's see. Yeah, so let's assume that I want to use how do you call it? I want to use the host, and where the host is function Friday node Azure website.net, and instead of API magic number and question mark all that, I want to do something like I just say numbers and then slash, and then I pass, let's say, a number 25. Now what this does is that it makes my endpoint looks a lot cleaner. It makes my endpoint a lot presentable. Okay, it makes my endpoint a lot easy to. So how would I achieve this? I can use proxies to do that, and that is what we're going to be doing with functions proxies. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and create our proxy. So I'm going to walk you through how to create a proxy in the portal. Quite simple. As always, we try to keep this stream shorter because I would be writing a blog post. So in other news, my blog is coming up. I'm still working on it. I had one, but I'm changing it to make the appeal a lot more easier, to make it easy to access. So hopefully by Monday I would have the blog up, and then I'll start having all the articles with in-depth step-by-steps and walkthroughs there. In the meantime, you can also go back and watch on demand all my recordings on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. So don't forget you can access me through the spot all through this channel. Now, so this is what we want to achieve. Our endpoint or host, we want to call numbers and then pass this. So let's go back to our portal. So to achieve this, what you want to do is that we go to our proxies here. Currently we don't have any proxies, so we go to proxies and then we hit the create new proxy. Now you need to give your proxy a name, so I'll call mine the numbers. So think about this. I could actually use proxies to also redirect, create redirects of the same functions endpoint. So this numbers functions we have, we can actually create multiple proxies on it. Maybe one proxy redirects you to a different portions of functions. Okay, let me show you this. Check this out. Let's go to the numbers API. Maybe this will make a lot of sense. Numbers API. Yeah, so numbersapi.com. So this is the API we're using. Now, by default, okay, if you call numbers API, right, and you do com/45, this is, and if you don't pass any flag, let's say you want a math fact, or you want a trivia, or you want a date fact, it's just going to randomize, with it's just going to give you a random fact from math, from trivia, from date. All right. Now, assuming that we want to use this single functions we have, to trigger either math, trivia, or date. So back to, let's go back here. So what we want to probably do is that, okay, we want 25, or we can say numbers, and then we can say we want something like math, all right, slash, and then 25. Or maybe you wanted something like this, 25 slash math, all right. And we don't want to change the underlining function, all right. We don't want to change the underlining function, all right. So what this does for us is that if you look at it, it's just simple, either appending math, or either appending, the date, whatever you want to append to it. So we can use proxies to create multiple endpoints from just one function. Okay, so let's copy this. Let's say we know that we're trying to do something like two. So right now, let's start with the first one, where instead of calling this function, API, magic number, all this, instead of calling this, let me bring this back here. This should make a lot of sense. So we're trying to transform a request like this into something like this. All right, where the host part is, let's say the whole of this is the host part. All right, okay. So back in the functions portal, so we give it a name. Let's call it this is actually random. So I'll just say we'll call this one random. And what's the route template? So the route template, what we're trying to achieve is that we want it to be this, right? Number slash something. So I'm going to do this here, and instead of a 25, I'm just going to say number. Now this does a couple of things. Now what this does is that it makes this number, let me actually zoom in so you can see this. Great. So what happens is that it makes this number a variable. It makes this number a variable that can be accessed in the request override or the response override. So and variables are declared within proxies using curly brackets. So now we have a variable. Now what HTTP methods are we allowing? We can allow selected ones. For now, we'll just allow all of it. Now what backend URL? Now this is the URL you intend to call when this proxy endpoint is hit. So in our case, we're trying to call this. This is it. This is what we're trying to call. We're trying to call this. However, all right, when we call this backend URL accepts a parameter. Now, how do we pass this parameter on? Now, that is what we use the request overrides to do. So when you call this endpoint, it intends call the backend URL, which is your functions you've defined. And then you can now override information or pass information from your request to the backend URL. Now, we know that when we call this API or this function we created, we need to pass, question mark, number, equals something. All right. Now, because we are creating a variable within our routes template, we can pass this variable to our backend URL. And bear in mind, this is just one function. All right, this is just one function. Okay, so we do this, and all we have to do now is to hit create. We wait for it to do its magic, and yes, we have that. And now take a look at this. Now this is now the endpoint we have for our function. Now remember that we said this side is the host. All right, now we can do something like, we can now do custom URLs or custom domains, where we can actually change this functions friday node to something, to probably functionfridays.net or functionsfriday.com or something else. But this represents the host part. If we bring back our whiteboard, this represents the host part, and this is what we wanted to achieve. So now you don't do numbers question mark, you just do numbers slash and a number you want to. So let's go ahead and test. Let's test this. Let's go ahead and test this out. I'm going to copy this. Let's go back now and paste this here. Now this time around, I can say slash numbers and then slash 35. And there you go, working perfectly. So we've created a simple proxy that is, abstracting some of these complexities into our function. So here it's now a lot more flexible. You don't need to do question mark numbers and pass all that. We've defined a custom route for that. So yeah, go ahead, 55, test it out. It works. 30, it works. It works just fine. All right. 13, it works fine. And this is how you create a simple functions proxy. Very simple, straightforward, very clean. Let's go back again now. This is very clean now. The request override, all right, request override is, now this is how I went about it. I actually passed, this is one way to go about it, where I passed this directly into the URL. Now I could have done this. I could have said that when you call, I'm going to get rid of the whole of this again just to show you that there are multiple ways to do it. I could now override the parameters, all right, to say that let's add a parameter. And I'm going to call the parameter what? Number, because that is what our function is expecting. And what is the value? The value is what? Number, which is the variable you created in the route template. Quite simple. And here again, I move that away from it. So realize that now our function is just, isolated. I just have to pass the parameters to it, and then, it's going to work. So go ahead, make sure you save this. Make sure we have that saved. And once that is saved, we can actually go back to the same endpoint right here and refresh. And our function should still be working same. Yeah, just warming, just taking. Yep. So let's do 56. And there you go. This is the maximum speed of analog data transmission over ports in the. So that is how to create function proxies, and that is how to pass the parameters into it. Now, it's not just variables, okay? There's something you should know. It's not just variables or parameter override. You can actually do a complete response override, all right? So instead of, let's say, instead of the response coming in as in this case here 56 is the maximum whatever, instead of this coming in, you can actually override the response that is coming. So I can just say, hey, I blocked you. Yeah, I could just say, hey, I blocked you. All right. And let's say, let's do this. So I'll just say, MSG and say, hey, man, we blocked you. Yeah, just trying to make sure I'm adhering to proper JSON, stuff. So I can save this. What I'm doing now is an override. I'm doing a response override. So with the response override, I'm saying that, well, after you process the whole thing, I want you to intercept the response and rather pass this. So think about it. You want to check responses for setting data points before you output to the user. So let's see what happens now. The same 56. Let's call this. Now, do you see what happened? I intercepted the function response, and now this is what I am passing. So that's the power of using proxies. You can intercept requests, you can intercept responses, and then you can modify them, okay, to create your own APIs or series of microservices. So since this is not something cool, let's go ahead, get rid of this, save our functions again, and go back here, call the same 56, and then we should be fine because now there isn't any response interception. It should give us our response. Now, it's not just request and response that can be intercepted, and it's not just variables, only variables that you can pass into the request and response. You can actually also use application settings. So let's go back to functions. Let me show you something before we call it a night on today's stream. So what if I have series of function endpoints, all right? Let's say I have one that called the math, I have one that probably calls something else, and I want to call them and pass that information on. I could actually store the whole of this endpoint here, right? Let's copy this. I could store the whole of this in an application, how do you call it? Application settings variable. And then reference that within my backend URL and it'll still work perfectly. So let me show you how to do that. So we're going to copy this from here. Actually, let's cut it. I'm going to put it in an application variable called service host, right? Okay, and I'm going to save this. Now, right now when I run it, it's not going to work because that endpoint has not been provisioned. So how do you do that? Let's go to our functions app, open the functions node application. In the overview section, we go to here to functions app settings. Yeah, and then we can set that. No, sorry, let's go back one point. It's actually the configuration. So select the function node, and functions app node. Yep, that loads it, and then come down here to the configuration, and then under application settings I will click on add new settings. I've gone ahead to add that, which is service host, and this, as you can see, is pointing to the same endpoint we copied here. Alright, so that's done. Now when the function is saved, let's go back to the functions app and let's go back to our proxy. Let's open our proxy, the random proxy. Service host is set, is saved. Now let's go back and just rerun this and see. This should work. Okay, so HTTP function, the 56. Okay, let's try this again. So it looks like we have, so service host slash API slash magic number. Let's check our request override. Yes, we have the number which is coming in. Okay, service host, let me see if the slashes are correct. Service host slash slash API. So let's be very sure we have this. Let's go back here, functions node and configuration, and I'm going to reduce this a bit so I can get to service host. So let's do this. Let's actually edit it, make sure we are getting the right name, and then we are getting, so function Friday API. Yeah, okay, this looks good. Okay, so functions Friday net, when we call this should resolve to the back. Let's open this up and go to the proxy. Open our proxy, make sure we have, yep, so this is our endpoint numbers and this is the backend. So slash API, yeah, so HTTPS // we have our percentage service host percentage slash API slash our magic number. Yep. Okay, let me copy this. Copy. Hold on a sec. Let me paste this here before I lose that. Okay, and then let me copy this and let's go back here. Oh yeah, I'll just do 15. Okay, let's see. It looks like it's Let me put this back here and see what's happening. Oh, that's why. So it copied it twice. Oops. It copied it twice. Yeah, that was why. Let's save this HTTPS function Friday node API magic number. Yeah, so it looked like we had the HTTP copied twice instead of just the functions. So that's why our application was misbehaving. So let's go there and make sure we have, okay, it's still saving. Yep, let's make sure we have that saved properly in the application settings, and then we should have the proxy working again. This has taken a longer time. So yes, again, if you want to learn more about Azure Functions, IoT, and pretty much anything on Azure App Service, the Azure Service offering, feel free to tweet at me, feel free to reach me. I would be more than happy to help you go through it. And don't forget, upcoming events. Tomorrow is the Mixed Reality Bootcamp with the Microsoft User Group. And then on the 14th of December is the Global AI Bootcamp, which is being hosted by the Accra.net user group. I will be presenting, we'll be doing some cognitive services, crazy stuff bot service. Don't forget to make a date with us. Um, and then, yeah, and keep an eye out for our regular meetups, Accra.net. Keep an eye on for our meetups. Oh, sorry, 5. Yep, and there you go, and we have that working. Let's try 10. Yep, and then we can actually try 15. So just make a date with me. Next Tuesday, actually, I'm going to be streaming on Sunday. We're going to be continuing with the Omni channel, Omni post app we're building. We worked on the DevOps CI/CD last Sunday. Today we're going to continue to add, and on Sunday we're going to add modules and start, structuring the application properly. Um, Now, for those of you who want to see some extra things, so what I have done is that I've actually gone ahead to use this same numbers API to create an Alexa skill that actually calls the same endpoint and tells me, um, a fact. So I'm going to open this up a bit so you can hear that. Alexa, open number fact.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Well, Alexa is trying to disappoint me, but I won't give up. Alexa, open number fact. Alexa, open number fact.
Hello, did you know that every number has an associated fact? Let's play a game. Tell me any number and I will tell you a fact.
15.
15 is the number of minutes carbon monoxide can kill a person in.
Thank you. So that is how
You're welcome.
that is how you
Good night.
thank you, Alexa. So that is how you can use functions in different parts. You could call functions in your mobile application. You could call functions in your Alexa, in your Cortana, in your Siri, pretty much in your web microservices. So until I come your way again next Tuesday for IoT Tuesdays, and then on Fridays for Functions Friday. This has been Samuel Adranyi with another episode of Functions Friday. Make it there with me. Enjoy your weekend. Stay blessed. Learn something new. Learn, share, and grow.